Yes. Yes.
Hush, child, the darkness will rise from the deep and carry it out into sleep, child. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry it out into sleep. The sun, I'll shape your belief, and you'll always know that your father's a thief, and you won't understand the cause of your grief, but you'll always follow the voices beneath. Guileless son, your spirit will hate her, the flower who married my brother, the traitor, and you will expose his puppet behavior, for you are the proof of how we betrayed her loyalty. Hush, child, the darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep, child. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Guileless son, each day you grow older, each moment I'm watching my vengeance unfold. For the child of my body, the flesh of my soul will die in returning the birthright he stole. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep, child. The darkness will rise from
Hello guys, we have finally made it back. So here we are. Tonight going to get to our Lovecraft tale we did not get to last night or this morning. Get to some Call of Cthulhu, then we'll see about some Hunt, anything else we have time for. But going to be good, and we are just getting started. So let's take a look. Read a nice Lovecraft tale to begin. And have a very fun time of that. Hope everyone had a good rest of their Tuesday evening there last night, and a wondrous Wednesday so far. Some exciting chats of the stuff yesterday, some nice lurkers. Look forward to great times here tonight. Going to be just fine. Alrighty, well, welcome in. Welcome back to the Dragon's Roost. Exciting place to be for some exciting stuff this evening. Don't think we need to do any stream tests or such. Things should be working just fine. And yeah, around this time this week we are celebrating about our 750th stream, VODs and such the rest. Let's get a good YouTube message here maybe for new milestone for that. All my VODs and some highlights from the stream. We could maybe do a little more elaborate message there, since we do have quite a bit by now. So yeah, why don't we spruce that up just a little bit. We have YouTube, Discord, there it is, YouTube, Tomahawk, and the rest, one of our very first commands. Okay, we have that little pipe there. Next one, yes, okay. We have nearly 1,000 videos of all our many adventures, readings, reflections, and celebrations. Place to enjoy. Link to the channel there is the slide. Should be just fine. Alright. Gives the general idea there. Submit. And I think that'll be fine for now. Just a little more elaborate. The first one was simple enough, surely, but now we're celebrating. Just a little bit more to it, so I think that is great. Have to gift the sub to Nightbot sometime. I think you can do that, right? Yeah, you certainly can. I don't think you'd always have the emotes then, but yeah, it's just kind of funny. Some more emotes. Oh well. Anyway, let's take a look for our Lovecraft tale before we get some Call of Cthulhu. Combine that Call of Cthulhu badge and other fun stuff of the sort. We also did get a full updates here for recent games. Core Keeper big update, Vermintide, Phasmophobia. Some good new things in the mix there. We'll get the Call of Cthulhu badge in a little bit. But first thing first, we will be reading our next story. So we'll get to some poems later. For now, I want to just go straight to a big main story. Let's see what we can enjoy here. The Dreams in the Witch House. How long have we got here? Okay, I can tell already. That is substantial. Let's save the Dreams in the Witch House for another time. I don't want to be here for 3 hours in a row quite yet. Let's see. The Horror in the Burying Ground. Maybe a little more reasonable. Yeah, this one's not too bad. This one is still long enough, but not like huge like that other one. So alright, we shall enjoy now then. We have voice mod working just fine.
Anytime you like about mirror widgets for voice mod activation there, good time to do it during these readings and narration of the sort.
That is the Spellcaster, for example. We have many other voices. Voice Mod Pro, I can always add more voices when you guys are ready for that too. Alright, but in case, good to be back. Happy 750th stream, more or less. And let us enjoy a great time Going forward, we'll get some hunt in a bit after Call of Cthulhu. And very first, right to the beginning here, we have... Yeah, I'll make some announcements, get on earlier tomorrow, hopefully, but looking fine tonight. Looking just fine tonight. Don't have that roost picture yet in the emojis. Oh well. We'll get that roost picture at some point as an emote, I mean. Figure that out. Alright, looking good. Looking just fine here. Dead by Daylight nonsense. Get to that another Tuesday. I am not too worried about it. Plenty of time for hunting the rest, though. Okay, the rest will soon to come here. Great times. No need for stream tests, maybe just periodically here and there. But for now, guys, let us begin with The Horror in the Burying Ground by H.P. Lovecraft for Hazel Held. And here we go. When the state highway to Rutland is closed, travelers are forced to take the Stillwater Road past Swamp Hollow. The scenery is superb in places, yet somehow the route has been unpopular for years. There is something depressing about it, especially near Stillwater itself. Motorists feel subtly uncomfortable about the tightly shuttered farmhouse on the knoll just north of the village, and about the white-bearded half-wit who haunts the old burying ground on the south, apparently talking to the occupants of some of the graves. Not much is left to Stillwater now. The soil is played out, and most of the people have drifted to the towns across the distant river or to the city beyond the distant hills. The steeple of the old white church has fallen down, and half of the 20-odd straggling houses are empty and in various stages of decay. Normal life is found only around Peck's General Store and filling station, and it is here that the curious stop now and then to ask about the shuttered house and the idiot who mutters to the dead. Most of the questioners come away with a touch of distaste and disquiet. They find the shabby loungers oddly unpleasant and full of unnamed hints in speaking of the long past, even brought up. There is a meaning, portentous quality in the tones which they use to describe very ordinary events, a seemingly unjustified tendency to assume a furtive, suggestive, confidential air, and to fall into awesome whispers at certain points. Which insidiously disturbs the listener. Old Yankees often talk like that, but in this case, the melancholy aspects of the half-moldering village and the dismal nature of the story unfolded give these gloomy, secretive mannerisms an added significance. One feels profoundly and quintessential horror that lurks behind the isolated Puritan and his strange repressions, feels it, and longs to escape precipitately into clearer air. The loungers whisper impressively that the shuttered house is that of old Miss Sprague, Sophie Sprague, whose brother Tom was buried on the 17th of June, back in '86. Sophie was never the same after that funeral. That and the other thing which happened the same day, and in the end she took to staying in all the time. Won't even be seen now, but leaves notes under the back door mat, and has her things brought from the store by Ned Peck's boy, afraid of something. The old Swamp Hollow burying ground most of all. Never could be dragged near there since her brother and the other one, were laid away. Not much wonder, though, seeing the way crazy Johnny Dow rants. He hangs around the burying ground all day and sometimes at night, and claims he talks with Tom and the other. Then he marches by Sophie's house and shouts things at her. That's why she began to keep the shutters closed. He says things are coming from somewhere to get her sometime. Ought to be stopped. But one can't be too hard on poor Johnny. Besides, Steve Barber always had his opinions. Johnny does his talking to two of the graves. One of them is Tom Sprague's. The other, at the opposite end of the graveyard, is that of Henry Thorndyke, who was buried on the same day. Henry was the village undertaker, the only one in Miles, and never liked around Stillwater. A city fellow from Rutland, been to college and full of book learning. Read queer things nobody else ever heard of, and mixed chemicals for no good purpose, always trying to invent something new, some new fangled embalming fluid or some foolish kind of medicine. Some folks said he had tried to be a doctor but failed in his studies, and took to the next best profession. Of course, there wasn't much undertaking to do in a place like Stillwater, but Henry farmed on the side. Mean, morbid disposition, and a secret drinker, if you could judge by the empty bottles in his rubbish heap. No wonder Tom Sprague hated him and blackballed him from the Masonic Lodge and warned him off when he tried to make up to Sophie. The way he experimented on animals was against nature and scripture. Who could forget the state that collie dog was found in, or what had happened to old Mrs. Ackley's cat? Then there was the matter of Deacon Leavitt's calf, when Tom had led a band of the village boys to demand an accounting. The curious thing was that the calf came alive after all in the end, though Tom had found it as stiff as a poker. Some said the joke was on Tom, but Thorndyke probably thought otherwise, since he had gone down under his enemy's fist before the mistake was discovered. Tom, of course, was half drunk at the time. He was a vicious brute at best, and kept his poor sister half cowed with threats. That's probably why she is such a fear-racked creature still. There were only the two of them, and Tom would never let her leave because that meant splitting the property. Most of the fellows were too afraid of him to shine up to Sophie. He stood 6 feet in one of his stockings. But Henry Thorndyke was a sly cuss who had ways of doing things behind folks' backs. He wasn't much to look at, but Sophie never discouraged him any. Mean and ugly as he was, she'd have been glad if anybody could have freed her from her brother. She may not have stopped to wonder how she could get clear of him after he got clear of Tom, got her clear of Tom. Well, that was the way things stood in June of '86. Up to this point, the whispers of the loungers at Peck's store are not so unbearably pretentious, but as they continue, the element of secretiveness and malign tension grows. Tom Sprague, it appears, used to go to Rutland on periodic sprees, his absences being Henry Thorndyke's great opportunities. He was always in bad shape when he got back, and old Dr. Pratt, deaf and half-blind though he was, used to warn him about his heart, and about the danger of delirium tremens. Folks could always tell by the shouting and cursing when he was home again. It was on the 9th of June, on a Wednesday, the day after young Joshua Goodenough finished building his new fangled silo, that Tom started out on his last and longest spree. He came back then next Tuesday morning, and folks at the store saw him lashing his bay stallion the way he did when whiskey had a hold of him. Then there came shouts and shrieks and oaths from the Sprague house, and the first thing anybody knew, Sophie was running out over to old Dr. Pratt's at top speed. The doctor found Thorndyke at Sprague's when he got there, and Tom was on the bed in his room, with eyes staring and foam around his mouth. Old Pratt fumbled around and gave the usual tests, then shook his head solemnly and told Sophie she had suffered a great bereavement, that her nearest and dearest had passed through the pearly gates to a better land, just as everybody knew he would, if he didn't let up on his drinking. Sophie kind of sniffled the lounger's whisper, but didn't seem to take on much. Thorndyke didn't do anything but smile, perhaps at the ironic fact that he, always an enemy, was now the only person who could be of any use to Thomas Sprague. He shouted something in old Dr. Pratt's half-good ear about the need of having the funeral early on account of Tom's condition. Drunks like that were always doubtful subjects, and any extra delay with merely rural facilities would entail consequences, visual and otherwise, hardly acceptable to the deceased's loving mourners. The doctor had muttered that Tom's alcoholic career ought to have embalmed him pretty well in advance, but Thorndyke assured him to the contrary, at the same time boasting of his own skill and of the superior methods he had devised through his experiments. It is here that the whispers of the loungers grow acutely disturbing. Up to this point, the story is usually told by Ezra Davenport or Luther Fry. If Ezra is laid up with chilblains, as he is apt to be in winter, but from there an old Calvin Wheeler takes up the thread, and his voice has a damnably insidious way of suggesting hidden horror. If Johnny Dow happens to be passing by, there is always a pause, for Stillwater does not like to have Johnny talk too much with strangers. Calvin edges close to the traveler, and sometimes seizes a coat lapel with his gnarled, mottled hand while he half shuts his watery blue eyes. "Well, sir," he whispers, "Henry, he went home and got his undertaker's fixins. Crazy Johnny Dow lugged most of him, for he was always doing chores for Henry, and says as Doc Pratt and Crazy Johnny should help lay out the body." Welcome, Alucard. How are you doing? Good to see you. Thank you for starting off our chat for the day. Doing all right? Good to see you. Been a few days. We celebrated 2,000 hours since I last saw you, about our 750th stream at the moment. It is lovely to have you back. Starting our chat. Welcome indeed, Golden Dragon Champion, Alucard TARDIS. How goes it, my friend? We are doing a Lovecraft tale at the moment, horror, and the burying ground before we get to some Lovecraft Call of Cthulhu. The game itself, celebrating 10,000 about a week ago, 10,000 cheer from Dab Sturgis. And then we'll get some hunt as well for a full day, hopefully tomorrow. I got to do some watering, other stuff Thursday. but we'll get some other times as we can. It's been a little hot and dry. You can see my nose pretty red because it's so hot today, but great to see you, Alucard. How are you doing, my friend? Welcome on back. Enjoy those new animated emotes and Voice Mod Pro available for you anytime as well.
Greetings to Alucard.
I see.
Mr. Alucard Tardis, a longtime champion and supporter. Welcome back to the Roost, my friend. Great to see you, as always.
Ben, I am concerned I have thrown my lot in with a demented infant.
You've got nothing but insults, have you? A tired little...
He shouldn't die. Yes, fuck you. True.
Some Alucard quotes for you there. Yep, absolutely, Alucard. Great to see you, bro. Yeah, man, some good stuff. Here we are. Back to it, a fun time. You know it. We made it. Glad you're having a nice time of it. Keep it up. Most definitely, Sir Alucard. Smart and other fun times. Great to have you. Great to chat with you. Let's see where we were here. Suppose, says he, some fellows was to be took with some of them paralyzed and cramps like you read about. How'd a body like it when they lowered him down and begun shoveling the dirt back? How'd he like it when he was choking down there under the new headstone, scratching and tearing if he chanced to get back the power, but all the time knowing it wasn't no use? No, sir. I tell you it's a blessin' Stillwater's got a smart doctor as knows when a man's dead and when he ain't, and a trained undertaker who can fix a corpse so he'll stay put without no trouble. That was the way Henry went to talking. Most like he was talking to poor Tom's remains, and old Doc Pratt, he didn't like what he had, was able to catch of it, even though Henry did call him a smart doctor. Crazy Johnny kept watching of the corpse, and it didn't make none too pleasant that way he'd slobber about things like, "He ain't cold, Doc," or "I see his eyelids move," or "There's a hole in his arm just like the ones I get when Henry gives me a syringe full of what makes me feel good." Yes, Alucard with his glorious black dragon as well. Thorndyke shut him up on that, though we all knowed he'd been giving poor Johnny drugs. It's a wonder the poor fellow ever got clear of the habit. But the worst thing, according to the doctor, was the way the body jerked up when Henry begun to shoot it full of embalming fluid. He'd been boasting about what a fine new formula he'd got practicing on cats and dogs, when all of a sudden Tom's corpse began to double up like it was alive and a-fixin' to wrastle. Land of Goshen. But Doc says he was scared stiff, though he knowed the way corpses act when the muscles begin to stiffen. Well, sir, the long and short of it is that the corpse sat up and grabbed a holt of Thorndyke's syringe so that it got stuck in Henry hisself, and give him as neat a dose of his own embalming fluid as you'd wish to see. That got Henry pretty scared, though he yanked the point out and managed to get the body down again and shot full of the fluid. It's pretty funny, a picture there, the cowboy Cthulhu. It's also quite appropriate for this story, I feel like. Yeah. Okay. He kept measuring more of the stuff out as though he wanted to be sure there was enough, and kept reassuring himself as not much had got into him. But Crazy Johnny begun singing out. That's what you give Leg Hopkins' dog when it got all dead and stiff and then walked up again. Now you're a-going to get dead and stiff like Tom Sprague be. Remember, it don't set to work till after a long spell, if you don't get much. Sophie, she was downstairs with some of the neighbors. My wife, Matilde, she that dead and gone this 30 year, was one of them. They were all trying to find out whether Thorndyke was over when Tom came home, and whether finding him there was what set poor Tom off. I may as well as say as some folks thought it might be funny that Sophie didn't carry on more, nor mind the way Thorndyke had smiled. Not as anybody was hinting that Henry helped Tom off with some of his queer cooked-up fluids and syringes, or that Sophie would keep still if she thought so, but you know how folks will guess behind a body's back. We all know the nigh crazy was Thorndyke had hated Tom not without reason at that, and Emily Barbour says to my Matilde is how Henry was lucky to have old Doc Pratt right on the spot with a death certificate, as didn't leave no but doubt for nobody. When old Calvin gets to this point, he usually begins to mumble indistinguishably in his straggling, dirty white beard. Most listeners try to edge away from him, and he seldom appears to heed the gesture. It is generally Fred Peck, who was a very small boy at the time of the events, who continues the tale. Thomas Sprague's funeral was held on Thursday, June 17th, only 2 days after his death. Such haste was thought almost indecent in remote. Thank you for using some of ours as well, Alucard. In remote and inaccessible Stillwater, where long distances had to be covered by those who came. But Thorndyke had insisted that the peculiar condition of the deceased demanded it. The undertaker had seemed rather nervous since preparing the body, and could be seen frequently feeling his pulse. Old Dr. Pratt thought he must be worrying about the accidental dose of embalming fluid. Naturally, the story of the laying out had spread, so that a double zest animated the mourners, who assembled to glut their curiosity and morbid interest. Thorndyke, though he was obviously upset, seemed intent on doing his professional duty in magnificent style. Sophie and others who saw the body were most startled by its utter lifelikness, and the mortuary virtuoso made doubly sure of his job by repeating certain injections at stated intervals. He almost wrung a sort of reluctant admiration from the townsfolk and visitors, though he tended to spoil that impression by his boastful and tasteless talk. Whenever he administered to his silent charge, he would repeat the eternal rambling about the good luck of having a first-class undertaker. What he would say, as if directly addressing the body, if Tom had had one of those careless fellows who bury their subjects alive. The way he harped on the horrors of premature burial was truly barbarous and sickening. Services were held in the stuffy best room, opened for the first time since Mrs. Sprague died. The tuneless little parlor organ groaned disconsolately, and the coffin, supported on trestles near the hall door, was covered with sickly-smelling flowers. It was obvious that a record-breaking crowd was assembling from far and near, and Sophie endeavored to look properly grief-stricken for their benefit. Great to see you as well there, Grim, also with a dragon champion status, almost as shiny and lovely as your brother there. Great to see you both. Welcome back. Grim. Good to see you.
Hello there, Mr. Alucard, TARDIS, and Gaming Grim Reaper. Welcome back to the Roost, my friends. It is great to see you all the way from New Zealand. Welcome back.
Good evening. How are you doing? Lovecraft Tale at the moment. The horror and the burying ground. Glad you can make it, Grim. Good evening on a Call of Cthulhu next. Very excited for that. And a bit of Hunt after we get a few good adventures in that. At unguarded moments, she seemed both puzzled and uneasy, dividing her scrutiny between the feverish-looking Undertaker and the lifelike body of her brother. How are you doing, Grim? Alucard just telling me he's finishing work. How was your day? Gotta be here for the evening, looking pretty clear. Most of the morning tomorrow, too. Get some watering your such tomorrow afternoon, but we will be back for tomorrow evening. For exciting time, celebrating our 750th stream, just about. Glad you could make it. Very exciting to have you. Mr. Grimm.
Welcome back.
Okay. A slow disgust at Thorndyke seemed to be brewing within her, and neighbors whispered freely that she would soon send him about his business now that Tom was out of the way, that is, if she could, for such a slick customer was sometimes hard to deal with. But with her money and remaining looks, she might be able to get another fellow, and he'd probably take care of Henry well enough. As the organ wheezed into Beautiful Isle of Somewhere, the Methodist Church choir added their lugubrious voices to the gruesome cacophony, and everyone looked piously at Deacon Leavitt. Everyone, that is, except Crazy Johnny Dow, who kept his eyes glued to the still form beneath the glass of the coffin. He was muttering softly to himself. Stephen Barber, from the next farm, was the only one who noticed Johnny. He shivered as he saw that the idiot was talking directly to the corpse and even making foolish signs with his fingers as if to taunt the sleeper beneath the plate glass. Tom, he reflected, had kicked poor Johnny around on more than one occasion, though probably not without provocation. Something about this whole event was getting on Stephen's nerves. There was a suppressed tension and brooding abnormality in the air for which he could not account. Johnny ought not to have been allowed in the house, and it was curious what an effort Thorndyke seemed to be making not to look at the body. Every now and then, the Undertaker would feel his pulse with an odd air. The Reverend Silas Atwood droned on in a plaintive monotone about the deceased, about the striking of death's sword in the midst of this little family, breaking the earthly tie between this loving brother and sister. Several of the neighbors looked furtively at one another from beneath lowered eyelids, while Sophie actually began to sob nervously. Thorndyke moved to her side and tried to reassure her, but she seemed to shrink curiously away from him. His motions were distinctly uneasy, and he seemed to feel acutely the abnormal tension permeating the air. Finally, conscious of his duty as masters of ceremonies, he stepped forward and announced in a sepulchral voice that the body might be viewed for the last time. Slowly, the friends and neighbors filed past the bier, from which Thorndyke roughly dragged Crazy Johnny away. Tom seemed to be resting peacefully. That devil had been handsome in his day. A few genuine sobs, and many feigned ones, were heard, though most of the crowd were content to stare curiously and whisper afterward. Steve Barber lingered long and attentively over the still face, and moved away, shaking his head. His wife, Emily, following after him, whispered that Henry Thorndyke had better not boast so much about his work, for Tom's eyes had come open. They had been shut when the services began, for she had been up and looked. But they certainly looked natural, not the way one would expect after 2 days. When Fred Peck gets this far, he usually pauses as if he did not like to continue. The listener, too, tends to feel that something unpleasant is ahead, but Peck reassures his audience with a statement that what happened isn't as bad as folks like to hint. Even Steve never put into words what he may have thought, and Crazy Johnny, of course, can't be counted at all. It was Luella Morse, the nervous old maid who sang in the choir, who seems to have touched things off. She was filing past the coffin like the rest, but stopped to peer a little closer than anyone else except the barbers had peered. And then, without warning, she gave a shrill scream and fell in a dead faint. Naturally, the room was at once a chaos of confusion. Old Dr. Pratt elbowed his way to Luella and called for some water to throw in her face, and others surged up to look at her and at the coffin. Johnny Dow began chanting to himself. He knows. He can hear all we're a-saying and see all we're a-doing, and they'll bury him that way. But not one stopped to decipher his mumbling except Steve Barber. Good to see you there, champions. Alucard of his own merit, and Grim, courtesy of Shipleft. Hope you are having a nice evening there in New Zealand. Hope you're enjoying. And it's great to have you here in the Roost as we celebrate more adventures and great things soon to come. And a fun celebration this past weekend. Very excited for the past week and this past weekend for keeping the Roost healthy and happy as it should be. In a very few moments, Luella began to come out of her faint, and could not tell exactly what had startled her. All she could whisper was, "The way he looked. The way he looked." But to other eyes, the body seemed exactly the same. It was a gruesome sight, though, with those open eyes and that high coloring. And then the bewildered crowd noticed something which put both Luella and the body out of their mind for a moment. It was Thorndyke, on whom the sudden excitement and jostling crowd seemed to be having a curiously bad effect. He had evidently been knocked down in the general bustle, and was on the floor trying to drag himself to a sitting posture. The expression on his face was terrifying in the extreme, and his eyes were beginning to take on a glazed, fishy expression. He could scarcely speak aloud, but the husky rattle of his throat held an ineffable desperation which was obvious to all. "Get me home, quick, and let me be. That fluid I got in my arm by mistake. Heart action. This damned excitement. Too much. Wait. Don't think I'm dead if I seem to. Only the fluid. Just get me home and wait. I'll come to later. Don't know how long. All the time I'll be conscious and know what's going on. Don't be deceived." As his words trailed off into nothingness, old Dr. Platt reached him and felt his pulse, watching a long time and finally shaking his head. "No use doing anything. He's gone. Heart no good. And that fluid he got in his arm must have been bad stuff. I don't know what it is." A kind of numbness seemed to fall on all the company. New death in the chamber of death. Only Steve Barber thought to bring up Thorndyke's last choking words. Was he surely dead when he himself had said he might falsely seem so? Wouldn't it be better to wait a while and see what would happen? And for that matter, what harm would it do if Doc Pratt were to give Tom Sprague another looking over before burial? Crazy Johnny was moaning, and had flung himself on Thorndyke's body like a faithful dog. "Don't ye bury him! Don't ye bury him! He ain't dead no more, nor Liege Hopkins' dog, nor Deacon Leavitt's calf was when he shot him full. He's got some stuff he puts into ye to make ye seem like dead when ye ain't. Ye seem like dead, but ye know everything what's a-goin' on, and the next day ye come to as good as ever. Don't ye bury him. He'll come to under the earth, and he can't scratch up. He's a good man, and not like Tom Sprague. Hope to God Tom scratches and chokes for hours and hours. But no one save Barber was paying any attention to poor Johnny. Indeed, what Steve himself had said had evidently fallen on deaf ears. Uncertainty was everywhere. Old Doc Pratt was applying final tests and mumbling about death certificate blanks, and unctuous Elder Atwood was suggesting that something be done about a double interment. With Thorndyke dead, there was no undertaker this side of Rutland, and it would mean a terrible expense if one were to be brought from there, and if Thorndyke were not embalmed in this hot June weather, well, one couldn't tell. And there were no relatives or friends to be critical unless Sophie chose to be. But Sophie was on the other side of the room, staring silently, fixedly, and almost morbidly into her brother's coffin. That's pretty fitting, huh? We're on June 15th, and this takes place in June as well. That's cool. Deacon Levitt tried to restore a semblance of decorum, and had poor Thorndyke carried across the hall to the sitting room, meanwhile sending Zenas Wells and Walter Perkins over to the undertaker's house for a coffin of the right size. The key was in Henry's trousers pocket. Johnny continued to whine and paw at the body, and Elder Atwood busied himself with inquiring about Thorndyke's denomination, for Henry had not attended local services. When it was decided that his folks in Rutland, all dead now, had been Baptists, the Reverend Silas decided that Deacon Levitt had better offer the brief prayer. It was a gala day for the funeral fanciers of Stillwater and vicinity. Even Luella had recovered enough to stay. Gossip, murmured and whispered, buzzed busily while a few composing touches were given to Thorndyke's cooling, stiffening form. Johnny had been cuffed out of the house, as most agreed he should have been in the first place, but his distant howls were now and then wafted gruesomely in. When the body was encoffined and laid out beside that of Thomas Sprague, the silent, almost frightening-looking Sophie gazed intently at it as she had gazed at her brothers. She had not uttered a word for a dangerously long time, and the mixed expression on her face was past all describing or interpreting. As the others withdrew to leave her alone with the dead, she managed to find a sort of mechanical speech, but no one could make out the words, and she seemed to be talking first to one body and then the other. And now, with what would seem to an outsider the acme of gruesome unconscious comedy, the whole funeral mummery of the afternoon was listlessly repeated. Again the organ wheezed, again the choir screeched and scraped, again a droning incantation arose, and again the morbidly curious spectators filed past a macabre object. This time a dual array of mortuary repose. Some of the more sensitive people shivered at the whole proceeding, and again Stephen Barber felt an underlying note of eldritch horror and demonic abnormality. God, how lifelike both of those corpses were, and how in earnest poor Thorndyke had been about not wanting to be judged dead, and how he hated Tom Sprague. But what could one do in the face of common sense? A dead man was a dead man, and there was old Doc Pratt with his years of experience. If nobody else bothered, why should one bother oneself? Whatever Tom had got, he had probably deserved, and if Henry had done anything to him, the score was even now. Well, Sophie was free at last. As the peering procession moved at last toward the hall and the outer door, Sophie was alone with the dead once more. Elder Atwood was out in the road talking to the hearse driver from Lee's livery stable, and Deacon Leavitt was arranging for a double quota of pallbearers. Luckily, the hearse would hold 2 coffins. No hurry. Ed Plummer and Ethan Stone were going ahead with shovels to dig the second grave. There would be 3 livery hacks and any number of private rigs in the cavalcade. No use trying to keep the crowd away from the graves. Then came that frantic scream from the parlor, where Sophie and the bodies were. Its suddenness almost paralyzed the crowd and brought back the same sensation which had surged up when Luella had screamed and fainted. Steve Barber and Deacon Levitt started to go in, but before they could enter the house, Sophie was bursting forth, sobbing and gasping about. "That face at the window! That face at the window!" At the same time, a wide-eyed figure rounded the corner of the house, removing all mystery from Sophie's dramatic cry. It was, very obviously, the face's owner, poor crazy Johnny, who began to leap up and down, pointing at Sophie and shrieking, "She knows! She knows! I seen it in her face when she looked at him and talked to him. She knows, and she's a-letting him go down into the earth to scratch and claw for air. But they'll talk to her so she can hear him. They'll talk to her and appear to her, and someday they'll come back and get her." Zenas Wells dragged the shrieking half-wit to a woodshed behind the house and bolted him in as best he could. His screams and poundings could be heard at a distance, but nobody paid him any further attention. The procession was made up, and with Sophie in the first hack, it slowly covered the short distance past the village to the Swamp Hollow burying ground. Elder Atwood made appropriate remarks as Thomas Sprague was laid to rest, and by the time he was through, Ed and Ethan had finished Thorndyke's grave on the other side of the cemetery, to which the crowd presently shifted. Deacon Levitt then spoke ornamentally, and the lowering process was repeated. People had begun to drift off in knots, and the clatter of receding buggies and carry-alls was quite universal when the shovels began to fly again. As the earth thudded down on the coffin lids, Thorndyke's first, Steve Barber, noticed the queer expressions flittering over Sophie Sprague's face. He couldn't keep track of them all, but behind the rest there seemed to lurk a sort of wry, perverse, half-suppressed look of vague triumph. He shook his head. Zenas had run back and led Crazy Johnny out of the woodshed before Sophie got home, and the poor fellow at once made frantically for the graveyard. He arrived before the shovelmen were through, and while many of the curious mourners were still lingering about, what he shouted into Tom Sprague's partly filled grave, and how he clawed at the loose earth of Thorndyke's freshly finished mound across the cemetery, surviving spectators still shudder to recall. Jotham Blake, the constable, had to take him back to the town farm by force, and his screams waked dreadful echoes. This is where Fred Peck usually leaves off the story. What more, he asks, is there to tell? It was a gloomy tragedy, and one can scarcely wonder what Sophie grew queer after that. That is all one hears if the hour is so late that old Calvin Wheeler has tottered home. But when he is still around, he breaks in again with that damnably suggestive and insidious whisper. Sometimes those who hear him dread to pass either the shuttered house or the graveyard afterward, especially after dark. Fred was only a little shaver then, and don't remember no more than half of what was going on. You want to know why Sophie keeps her house shuttered, and why Crazy Johnny still keeps a-talkin' to the dead and a-shoutin' at Sophie's windows? Well, sir, I don't know's I know all there is to know, but I hear what I hear. Here the old man ejects his cut of tobacco and leans forward to buttonhole the listener. It was that same night, mind ye, toward mornin', and just 8 hours after them burials, when we heard the first scream from Sophie's house. Woke us all up. Steve and Emily Barber and me and Matildy goes over hot footin', all in night gear, and finds Sophie all dressed and dead, fainted on the settin' room floor. Lucky she hadn't locked the door. When we got her to she was shaken like a leaf, and wouldn't let on by so much as a word what was ailin' her. Matildy and Emily done what they could to quiet her down, but Steve whispered things to me as didn't make me none too easy. Come about an hour when we allowed we'd be goin' home soon, that Sophie she begun to tip her head on one side like she was a-listenin' to somethin'. Then on a sudden she screamed again and keeled over in another faint. Well, sir, I'm tellin' what I'm tellin', and won't do no guessin' like Steve Barber would have done if he dared. He always was the greatest hand for hintin' things. Died 10 years ago of pneumonia. What we heard so faint like was just poor Crazy Johnny, of course. 'Tain't more than a mile to the buryin' ground, and he must have got out of the window where they'd locked him up at the town farm, even if Constable Blake says he didn't get out of that night. From that day to this, he hangs around them graves a-talkin' to the both of them, cussin' and kickin' at Tom's mound, and puttin' posies and things on Henry's. And when he ain't a-doin' that, he's hangin' around Sophie's shuttered windows, howlin' about what's a-comin' soon to get her. She wouldn't never go near the buryin' ground, and now she won't come out of the house at all nor see nobody. Got to sayin' there was a curse on Stillwater, and I'm dinged if she ain't half right. The way things is a-goin' to pieces these days, there certainly was something queer about Sophie right along. Once when Sally Hopkins was a-callin' on her, in 97 or 98, I think it was, there was an awful rattlin' at her winders, and Johnny was safe locked up at the time, at least, so Constable Dodge swore up and down, but I ain't takin' no stock in their stories about noises every 17th of June, or about faint shinin' figures a-tryin' Sophie's door, and winders every black mornin' about 2 o'clock. Last couple paragraphs here, guys.
got voice mod to be used at any time. It is a fun feature, glad to have it. Some interesting ones to be sure.
You see, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning that Sophie heard the sounds and keeled over twice that first night after the burying. Steve and me and Matilde and Emily heard the second lot, facing as it was, just like I told you. And I'm a-telling you against how it must have been Crazy Johnny over to the burying ground. Let Jotham Blake claim what he will. There ain't no telling the sound of a man's voice so far off. And with our heads full of nonsense, it ain't no wonder we thought there was 2 voices, and voices that had not to be speaking at all. Steve, he claimed, to have heard more than I did. I verily believe he took some stock in ghosts. Matilde and Emily was so scared they didn't remember what they heard, and curious enough, nobody else in town, if anybody was awake at the ungodly hour, never said nothing about hearing no sounds at all. Whatever it was so faint it might have been the wind if there hadn't been words. I made out a few, but don't want to say I'd back up all Steve claimed to have caught. Said you'd stand by, get rid of him and bury me, in a kind of changed voice. Then there was that awful coming again someday, in a death-like squawk. But you can't tell me Johnny couldn't have made those sounds. Hey, you! What's taking you off in such a hurry? Maybe there's more I could tell you if I had a mind. Alrighty, hope you enjoyed The Horror in the Burying Ground by H.P. Lovecraft. And there it is. Pretty interesting. Pretty fun time of that. Other than for our next event, we do have Call of Cthulhu ready to go. And first thing for that, so we switch over to live scene, will be to make the badge here. So let's check out the copper badge ready to be made into the bronze badge. Let's switch on over to the live scene for that. Some Call of Cthulhu. Good adventure. Right this moment. Alrighty then. Here it is. Copper to bronze. And Call of Cthulhu. Ready to go. Alright, the bronze badge. We got a tentacle emote. Been very lucky with the emote so far. That is nice. Call of Cthulhu. All set and ready. See what that coupon is real quick. Sometimes it's fun to look at those. Eon Fleet. Here we have a good asteroid style game. Usually $17. Came out in 2018. Seems a bit expensive for that type of game, but we can get it now for, instead of 17, for about $2, something like that. 90% of 17. Yeah, not too much. Alright, headphones going in. We are ready. Return to Call of Cthulhu. First time since June 8th. Lots of excitement for this game. And let's get those headphones and such in and ready to go. A very exciting time for the last week. We got our top cheer ever from Dab during the Asylum portion. So that worked out quite wonderfully. Thanks again to Dab for that 1 week ago. We'll be resetting the tip jar I've had since then at the end of stream tonight. Let's launch it up.
Welcome back to Dab Sturgis Dragon Lord. Great to see you. Let us all give a warm welcome to Dab Sturgis.
One more shout out for him as we reminisce. We do have a new, actually, surprise to you guys, you may have seen it on desktop. 10,000 cheer does have a new alert now. So next I have to do the 5,000 one, I guess. But 10,000 is a good increment. 5,000 I feel like won't be used quite as much. So, alright, very exciting there. I'm going to show that little preview on desktop later if needed. For now, we are launched up and looking ready. So let's continue a bit there as we got our bronze badge. And a very exciting time of it right after that nice story. Another interesting graveyard one. We'll take a look at the nail such later. For now, we are ready and set. Yes, just to give a very brief preview of it. Okay, let me get it up here.
Fine.
Fine. You drinking water, right?
Fine.
Alright, a very quick little preview of the 10,000 cheer. That's all you get, is the first thing there. Alright, we are ready, looking good. Let's pick it up, shall we? No need to start a new game in the middle. We are looking good. After the Asylum, Hawkins Mansion. Yeah, we were just heading out into the world from there, right after the Asylum escape, so a good point to pick it up from. Definitely. Set sail for the good time. Let's have Grim and Alucard so far in the chat. Lovely brothers there, lovely champions, looking great. Yeah, one more night for current tip jar. Break the amazing 10,000 this month. Alright, made it out, and we're back to the mansion. I think they've said all there is to say. Talk to Sanders' widow, we go out the door.
Let us go now and learn the truth about what's happening on this island.
That's right where we left off.
Let us go now
Cool.
and learn the
Very
truth
good.
about what's happening on this island.
The other night's events are still confused in my head.
Let us go now.
The other night's events are still confused in my head.
Let us go now
All they have
and
to
learn
say.
the truth about what's happening on this island.
And for the gramophone, nothing else upstairs as such. So it's a perfect place to leave off. Little checkpoint. I already talked to them last time. Yeah, nothing else to do up here. So here we go. Out into the world. Ready for that. See you guys in a bit. Let's go. Chapter 6, Sanders' Residence. Pierce, Colden, and Bradley decided to team up to solve the Sarah Hawkins case. They have a new trail to follow. Francis Sanders, an art collector and friend of the painter who died right in front of Pierce. The detective goes to his house in order to speak to his widow about the shambler that the unfortunate man mentioned before he died. Alrighty, we'll check that out. Ready for it. Here we go.
What can I do for you, sir?
Mrs. Sanders, I'm a private
That's straight to it, huh?
Let's talk about your husband and his ties to Sarah Hawkins. Can I come in?
You may. However, before we go any further, please know that my husband died yesterday.
Yep.
That is precisely what brings me here.
Well, well, look who's
Oh,
here.
there's Kat. There she is.
You know each other.
Our paths crossed, briefly. The brave detective has a talent for sticking his nose into my business.
I bump into her every time I'm investigating someone's death.
It's a small island, Detective. My island. It's better that it's you bumping into me.
You're investigating Francis' death. Why? Who hired you?
I spoke to Francis before he died. His story suggests a link to a case I'm working on.
Well, since this business has got nothing to do with me, I'll be in your husband's office, Irene. We'll carry on later.
Very well, Miss Baker. This way, Mr. Pierce. And do make yourself comfortable. It would seem that you have much to tell me.
Okay. I went straight to that, and I don't know where the
May
other...
I inquire as to when you had the opportunity to talk to my husband?
Yesterday, I met him at the hospital. He spoke to me about Sarah Hawkins.
Oh, of course he spoke to you about her. That's all he talked about. Sarah Hawkins and her paintings. Please forgive my tone. The fact is that I have not been allowed to see him since he was interned. You, on the other hand, a perfect stranger, were able to see him and even talk with him the day he died. How was he? Were you present when he had this attack? What happened?
Must not feel guilty. We do not have that unlocked. Psychology professional. We're not that far along. He died screaming right before my eyes. I was no longer there when it happened. We are taking it quite well. So that's a lie. That's straight to the brutal truth. We can change it to her.
I expected to find you more grief-stricken than this by the death of your husband.
I do not like the tone of your allusion, sir. I had long months to weep every tear in my body, and to accept, if not my fate, at least that of my husband. And so I'm sorry to disappoint you if you're expecting more hysteria and grieving widow in my voice. Rest assured, however, my anger is real. I need to understand. How could this happen? In a reputed institute? And right before your eyes? Did you not do anything to help him?
That's right. Call of Cthulhu with shared grief, but I had nothing to do with it. Hold to test eloquence. We aren't master eloquence yet, but decent. The true culprit is Fuller. It wasn't me who sent him there.
So ask Fuller. He's the eminent doctor.
Yeah, doctor is
But I would
pretty
caution
nice.
you. You'll find his treatments more terrifying than the illnesses he sets out to cure.
That churl no longer takes the trouble to receive
This will
me.
affect your destiny.
He sends a secretary to tell me that I cannot see Francis. Me. His own widow. He must think that I am a terrible wife for having abandoned him in such a way. But I only wanted what was best for him.
I'm not here to condemn you, Mrs. Sanders.
Oh, I'm tired, Mr. Pierce. I would be grateful if you could tell me what you expect of me, and then leave.
Did he speak to you of a shambler? What is Kat doing here? How do you know Sarah Hawkins?
May I ask you what Miss Baker is doing here? How do you know her?
My business with Miss Baker is private, Mr. Pierce.
But you do know what kind of business Miss Baker is in, don't you?
I am no fool. Please believe that much, at least.
Did your husband talk to you about Sarah Hawkins' visitor? A shambler, to use his precise terms.
Well, you can imagine that's all he talked about. It's exhibited at the center of the gallery. No better place for the painting that endowed him with the privilege of such a shameful and miserable end to his life.
Hold on. The Shambler is a painting by Sarah Hawkins.
Who else to paint such horrors? Take a look for yourself, if you feel so inclined.
It is my only lead at this stage. I suppose I have nothing to lose.
Then you have paid no heed. For my part, I refuse to set foot in that gallery again. But if you're so eager to see it...
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. I won't be long.
Alright, now we'll investigate a little bit more. Did get some points. Going for... what next? I guess investigation. Alright. That'll work. Let's see what other clues and such we have here. Cellars. Few things. Okay. Take a look what else.
The day the Shambler came into the Sanders' lives.
There he was before he fell on much rougher times. Alright,
Did she really care for him after all?
Dear Madam, I acknowledge receipt of the letter in which you demand the body of your deceased husband. I am sorry to inform you that I cannot agree to return his body to you. At the moment of his interment, you signed a discharge allowing me to dispose of his body as I see fit. I extend my deepest condolences to you, Thomas Fuller. Alright, reconstruction, here we go.
Francis Sanders and Sarah Hawkins were close. Friends, even?
Examine the Shambler.
A house of artists. A house of artists. Sanders' accession register. He wrote beside the Shambler, "Finally." What did Sarah Hawkins fear so much that she didn't want to sell the painting?
Okay, there it is.
He finally won. Was Sanders aware of his imminent doom?
That's weird. Oh.
Was she jealous of Sarah Hawkins? She didn't want Sanders to have the painting. She must have felt devastated.
Okay. Uh-oh. Here we go.
The Shambler. I need to see it.
Breviary of Medicine, Tome 3, the second volume. Second volume in this series covers everything from gas gangrene to trench nephritis. In addition to a precise and detailed study, the book presents some avant-garde theories. The incredible complexity of this book reserves it for medical experts. Got some medicine from that. Slow going for those skills, but eventually.
Let's see what this cylinder has to say once it's inserted in a phonograph.
Audio recording that Francis Sanders left for his wife. Okay. Oh, there's this.
Irene, I made a mistake. I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never had the courage. Pay somebody to do it. He's inside my head. I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes. I can't take any more. I can't hold him back. Forgive me.
That accursed gallery. Those accursed paintings. That accursed Sarah.
Irene, I made a mistake.
Okay.
I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never
see
had the courage. Pay somebody to do it.
Anywhere else here?
I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes.
Interesting. Few things. Ah. Find the Shambler somewhere. There we go.
A strange Amerindian pendant.
Amerindian. Wonder what its purpose could be. Go ahead and take that. The Whale and the Cod. Brief history of Darkwater Island. One Greenmouth. Focus on the past glory of the island.
I could use one of those.
More sleeping pills. Were they prescribed to Francis Sanders or to Irene? We'll see.
Strange. For months, Sarah Hawkins refused to part with her painting, to finally give it away for nothing.
Dear Francis, I beg you to give up all hope of ever owning this accursed portrait painting. If our friendship has any meaning to you, please spare me the weight of the guilt. It cannot be the architect of your fall. I beg you, my dear friend, forget the Shambler. Your friend, Sarah Hawkins.
An old diary.
This volume spends more time Reverend Wickwood's community. His wife expresses her worries about the strange dreams that the Reverend's congregation are having since their arrival on the island. Some members of the community, her husband included, begin to speak of their vision as a messenger sent by God. She is scared that they will suffer the same fate as the lost tribe. Key to the Sanders Gallery. Perfect. There is Cat. Would you read the book? It's a kind of encyclopedia of monstrous and unknown creatures. I'm beginning to believe that they exist. Malleus Beastrom Volume 2. And that is... except to read an unholy book. Why not? Interesting. Okay. This will affect your destiny. Occultism. Sanity. Pierce read an ancient treatise, the Malleus Bestium. This bestiary makes an inventory of numerous creatures from the occult world or parallel dimensions. The very nature of its knowledge makes it an unholy book. By reading it, Pierce lost some of his sanity. Great. Yeah. Searching through the cellars of the Riverside Institute, Pierce entered a room that he first took for a morgue, but the advanced state of decay of the corpses that lay about the place quickly made him realize that he was wrong. Nothing could justify the presence of such a charnel house in a hospital. The putrid smell and total absence of respect for human life, as witnessed by this room, profoundly shocked Pierce, costing him some of his sanity. Alrighty. So far, there's Cat. Cat not being on the character sheet, apparently. Let's see.
That's twice you've stepped on my toes, Detective. Try not to make a habit of it.
I've got a lot of bad habits.
Some can be more fatal than others. What have you come looking for in this gallery?
Got to verify the painting for a buyer. Eloquence. Another painting by Sarah Hawkins. It's none of your business. I don't believe that one. That's kind of silly.
Another painting by Sarah Hawkins. One connected to the horrors I've discovered on this island.
What a surprise. I'm listening.
Very well.
There's more than that, Miss Baker.
So people have been talking behind my back. I was almost beginning to like you, Mr. Pierce. But it stays Cat for you.
You knew the Sanders?
Irene is a friend of mine.
And you? What brings you to the Sanders home?
I'm here on business. Irene asked me to liquidate all these paintings. She doesn't intend to hang around here for long.
Why you?
Believe it or not, there aren't many collectors on Darkwater. It needs someone with a network and a means of transport to the mainland. A choice that comes down to Fitzroy and me. And I'm far more pleasant, wouldn't you say?
For some reason, other options.
Not now, sweetheart. I'd like to read this without some snoop looking over my shoulder.
To tell her more of the horrors of the island like she was asking about.
Go take a hike, Detective. Go take a hike, Detective. Go take a hike, Detective.
Alright then. There's the gallery. Snooping around. Well, some fancy, crazy things in here. Jeez. Strange. That's what he said. That. Alright. Weird sphinxes of the sort. Cro-Magnon zombie sailor.
These artifacts date from pre-Columbian times.
Pre-Columbian time? Heard that before.
These artifacts date from pre-Columbian times.
Weird art. Nasty art. The Cthulhu tentacle. Look in there and
man transformed an entire wing of his manor into an art gallery.
Ah, the goose. That's a weird one. There's the shambler. Not oil. That would be oil for the lantern. Nice to have it when I need it. The same one there as earlier. Okay. Pretty interesting. Tentacle lion, basically there. Frame drops looking good. Alucard and Grimmer enjoying. Says, again. Oh, I can hide in here. I might need to. I mean, why would it be there if they didn't need it at some point? Cultists or something are gonna come up.
Why was he so interested in old weapons? Why was he so interested in old weapons?
Okay. There's that. Bear cabinet. Oil. So maybe it's gonna be dark in here and we have to hide. I feel like that's the likely case when we look at the shambler. So we'll hopefully be mentally prepared for that. A little bit. We'll try. Guess no other thing to do but the shambler. Oh.
Is this dagger part of Sanders' collection, or was he seeking to acquire it?
That's a cool little secret back there. Far from possessing the talents of Sarah Hawkins, Sanders drew a dagger with a tortured form down to the smallest detail. The guard carries a strange, esoteric symbol, a recurring feature of his correspondence with Sarah. Interesting. Alright, that was cool to find that. And now time for the main attraction, as it were, the shambler. Here we go. Let's see. Knew something was gonna happen. It's his own delusion or not. Here it comes. That's not good. Oh boy. Jeez. Freaky, freaky. Time to get out of here.
What the hell was that?
Somewhere around here. Windows are blurred. Trying to remember how to peek. Yeah, there we go. Get out the way I came in.
I can't even touch it.
Oh no. Well, they got me. Ouch. Alright, well, thankfully we're not on hardcore mode or anything, because, you know, that would be tough. Let's try that again.
What the hell was that?
Yeah, I don't think I would last long. Outlast one life mode. Probably not. But this is similar. Alright, there it is. Can't get out the door. Oh.
Damn. Did it? Maybe I can use this dagger.
That did not do much at all. Ooh. Alright. Alright, then, see, I guess the lantern doesn't help, and so far the dagger. Maybe I can block with
what
it.
What the hell was that?
I do not understand that. Let me try to get it again, though.
Damn. Maybe.
It probably has to be the right dagger. Yeah, none of these will do the right one. It comes to me right away. That doesn't do anything. Alright, so we'll have to find a special dagger. And we'll have
what the hell was that?
I don't know, the lantern doesn't seem to do anything. If I hide before it sees me hide, I should work. I'm not worried about Sandy over dying, so yeah, that's okay. The dimensional shambler comes from a dark and inhospitable dimension where the rarity of food sources keeps it in a state of permanent starvation. Pretty much the Demogorgon, yeah. This is why it is in a constant state of readiness to travel to other dimensions in order to feed on its inhabitants. Make sure you never weaken the veils of your dimension, otherwise you risk attracting this very dangerous creature. Should this happen, you have just to lay eyes upon it for its being to anchor itself in your dimension and allow it to rip you open with its claws. Malleus Becerra by Abigail G. So yeah, Sandy will go down in the locker. It's better than dying. Shaken at the moment. Paths of Insanity. We just have to sacrifice that in order to survive it. I don't know where it is now, so oh, there it is. Yeah, wait for it to pass, then it come out. Alright, so far the daggers I picked have not been the right trick. Yeah, I'm thinking it needs to be a better dagger. Why does it detect me so easily? Which dagger will do the trick? Doesn't seem to make any difference.
Damn. Maybe I can use this dagger.
This seems better than the others. He doesn't like attack with it, he just blocks. And the block is not effective. Probably have to sneak up on it or something. Yeah, it seems to me the only real option is to sneak up on it. The lantern doesn't seem to do anything. Gotta worry about that. Dance around with it a bit, see if I can sneak up. What other strategies would work here? Stab it on the back. That's not what you're supposed to do. Alright, so maybe it's the dagger and a door or something? I was thinking something like that could do the trick. But apparently not.
What the hell was that?
Freaky thumbnail there. Yeah. Alright. Continue to try the thing. Seems like a good dagger.
Damn. Maybe I can use this dagger. I can't even touch it.
Same effect.
No way out. No choice. I must get rid of it.
Somehow. That's the question, huh? That is the question. It's a little dark, sorry. Okay. Let's get rid of this. Maybe there's other artifacts to be. Oh yeah, I can use the dagger on the painting. Why didn't I think of that? Jeez. There you go. Oh.
Damn it! That thing came out of this painting. There has to be. I'll destroy it.
Burn it.
There has to be a link. Maybe if I destroy it.
I use all the daggers on it. Light the candle or something? No.
I could try tearing the painting with this thing.
Where is it? No! A perfect transition. That's it. So you can't do it when it's around. At least we're making some progress. Oh my goodness. This is funny.
What the hell was that?
Doesn't seem to matter the order of the daggers or anything to do with the lanterns so far. So maybe I'll save that good one for last. My way
Down. Maybe I can use this dagger.
That's right. Okay. Should have enough time.
Damn it! This dagger didn't work.
Maybe there's a specific dagger. It saw me just in time. Ridiculous. Alright. Well, we have a general strategy. We're gonna at least beat this part. We're at least gonna get past this thing. That'll be good.
What the hell was that?
Progress. Play longer next time. Fucking thing.
Maybe I can use this dagger. Damn it! This dagger didn't work.
Specific dagger. So that could be. Maybe one that the cultists use, but it's good like. Dagger on fire. So not much option for that. Oh boy. Nothing. I have to go through every single one of them, I guess. In that room. Chance to that's pretty crazy though. feel safer. You can see easily. Doesn't affect much. Wow, we've almost gone through them all. So process of elimination. It's everything in this room. Except the good one. Sneak on over real quick. Alright, that was the last one in that room. So that's something. What else we got? Trust the closets at the moment. Okay. Yeah, we still crazy times. Oh boy. The glyphs on this one. Yeah, doesn't seem like anything special. Is there any more? Should be the last one. Last one.
This dagger looks different.
This dagger looks different, yeah, because I did every single other one. Give him the freak out. Don't do that nonsense. Yeah, I used every single other one there was to use, so. Oh. Jeez. It's funny, that was just happened to be the one the whole time, and it was the very last one I used. Oh well, we got it. That's what matters. Holy smoke.
What's the matter with you?
Nah, about to cut his head from beyond. Wow.
You sure you won't be needing that hand? You're losing it, Detective.
Banish the shambler.
At this rate, you're right. The bottle will get you before I do.
You didn't see anything.
I saw you within an inch of putting a dagger through your forearm. Did I miss something more interesting?
Painting was cursed. We don't have enough cultism. How can you possibly have that much by now? It must be like very hidden secrets or something. I just drank a bit too much. Oh man.
I was attacked by a creature. I pushed it back, I think.
I think so too.
Oh.
You knew. You knew about the beast.
What are you talking about? Think yourself lucky that I saved your hand, even if it was to save my goods.
You mean me?
Don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. I'm talking about the contents of this gallery.
Jeez.
And by the way, where do you think you're going with that dagger?
It saved my life. It's an extraordinary dagger.
You should talk to Algernon Drake. He's an antique dealer here on Darkwater. He'll tell you all about it. From what I saw in the ledgers, it was him who sold it to Sanders.
You give me this information free of charge.
The creature. This dagger was the only weapon capable of pushing it back.
If Hawkins was trying to get rid of this shambler, she might have made contact with Drake. This antique dealer has a good knowledge of the occult. I have nothing to lose by meeting him.
You've got your spunk back. Go where you want. I'm staying here to talk business with Irene.
Interesting. The Nameless Bookstore, Chapter 7. The Shambler turned out to be much more than an artwork painted by Sarah Hawkins, as a huge creature came out of the painting to attack Pierce. After a hard fight, the detective managed to send it back to the painting. He later discovered that the dagger he used to repel the creature had been sold to Sanders by a man named Algernon Drake. Owner of the Nameless Bookstore, Pierce decided to pay the library a visit. Righty. Okay. Here's the bookstore. Very interesting, guys. Back in just a moment. Glad we made it through that. Alright, interesting stuff then. Now I gotta decide if I want to get on a couple rounds of hunt right now or save it for later. I left the Sanders house still shaken by my encounter with the Shambler. Thanks to Kat's indication, I ended up in the Nameless Bookstore, a haunt for devotees of esotericism. The place seems to have been burglarized. Who could have done such a thing? Levels, alright, investigation, expert. This is good for, yeah, lockpicking. The reason I did that, because I could not get through any locks. Sanity still shaken. Meet the Shambler. It is in Francis Sanders' private gallery that Pierce discovers the identity of the Shambler, a huge artwork painted by Sarah Hawkins. When Pierce approached it, a creature burst forth from the painting and immediately chased after him. The beast from another dimension has such a hold on the mind of a person who finds himself in its presence that a simple glance in its direction is enough for Pierce to lose some sanity. Pierce finally managed to send the Shambler back into the painting using a dagger engraved with a strange symbol. But this encounter has left its mark on the psyche of the investigator. Still under the influence of the creature, he almost stabbed his own hand. Thankfully, he made it out, though. Oh, there was that freaking picture the whole time, but I feel like it was pretty convenient for the game that is the very last one I used was the right one, so... Yeah, I mean, I did have that picture just before, but... Still, you know... you know, it's just... Went through all of them anyway. Maybe we can do it quicker next time. It's not a big deal. Same result, after all, so... That's pretty fun.
Where's the bookseller?
Yeah.
Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams.
This
It's the work that laid the foundations of psychoanalysis at the beginning of this century.
Huh. This practical work, written by Sigmund Freud for psychologists, describes the techniques of analytical interpretation of dreams. The analysis must follow several rules, especially that of free association, a principle announced by Freud at the end of the 19th century. It treats dreams as a way of revealing buried desires. I cannot believe that this theory is applicable to my nightmares. Yeah, probably not. Okay.
An old diary.
The pastor declares himself to be the prophet. He renounced God and worshipped a strange pagan entity with a monstrous appearance. His wife tried to reason with her husband, but in vain. He was convinced that he must listen to this voice in his head because it holds the truth. Hey, blood. Got some blood on it. Didn't he just break through that like before? But yeah, it was already blood there. I remember in the cutscene. Okay, then. History. In the 19th century, as the American whaling industry reached its peak in the rest of the world, whales gradually disappeared from the waters surrounding Darkwater. This phenomenon appears even more mysterious because up until then, the region was a favored refuge for cetaceans. In 1847, after months of pursuit, Scylla returns to a port with a gigantic creature on board. Its crew asserts that the sea monster had eaten all the disappeared whales. After a night of ferocious combat, the survivors managed to drag the beast onto the whaling ship. Okay, then, some anatomy, something there. More stuff here. More oil that I didn't really need that whole time. It's not that dark yet. I'm sure there'll be some caves or something. So far, nothing we can't handle just with regular gamma.
What happened here?
Still looking the dagger, I guess, is why they had the oil for that. Alright, the Nameless Bookstore. Here is our reconstruction.
Let's start over. Where did they break in from? Blood. Seems like amateur work.
A neutral shadow hand. Not identified.
To whom does this footprint belong?
Linguistics. Theology and mythology. Nothing back here. Medicine.
No sign of struggle. If the burglar smashed this jar, it wasn't intentionally. Was he hurt then?
Could be pretty drunk, I suppose.
What sort of thief leaves his tools at the crime scene? What happened that made the burglar flee before finishing his work? What killed all these animals?
Cockroaches and rats. Occultism.
What the? Charles Hawkins?
So.
What sort of power did Sarah Hawkins' painting possess?
Okay, then.
Sarah Hawkins helped hide something in this safe. Drake put in a great deal of effort to hide whatever is in here. Everything is linked to the Sarah Hawkins case.
Indeed. Well then. Okay. See about that.
Is everyone on this island taking sleeping pills?
I found these sleeping pills in the bookshop. Does the bookseller suffer from insomnia? Inspect 50 items. Alright. Guess I don't need any more, but that's...
What link did he find between Charles Hawkins and an old amulet?
Key of the Riley. This key that bears the Elder Sign is the only one able to protect your psyche. It is the form of a cylindrical medallion hanging at the end of a heavy chain. Hundreds of years ago, the star and the branch, whose purpose it is to push back the forces of the great old ones, were engraved at its center. Everything points to it being Charles Hawkins that tore it from its last owner, an Egyptian antique dealer. In press cuttings that mention the misdemeanor, the date of the robbery coincides with the last of Hawkins' trip to Cairo. It remains to be seen whether he knows of the purpose of the artifact. Try to find it. Sold for $20.53. Potential buyers. Ailman Drake. The Kegley Museum of Egyptian Wonders closes its doors. Table 3, other scripture. Interesting. Okay. There. Handbook on Anatomy and Dissection. The least that can be said about this book is that its title is well conceived. The illustrations of human anatomy and dissection methods presented are illustrated in great detail. You have to have a strong heart or the detachment proper to doctors to consult its pages. Gotcha. Alrighty. Looking good. Call of Cthulhu.
Drake left instructions on how to find the combination of his safe.
Alright, there we go. Page seems to be hidden here. It is possible to read. If somebody finds these memoirs, there will be no doubt that I am in serious trouble. My last and only hope is that my body and bones are still in this plane of reality, in order that they may be recovered and burned. The funeral urn must be given to my dear mother, if she is still of this world. The following message is of capital importance. Whoever reads these lines and demonstrates acuity as sharp as mine can hope to gain access to my most precious possession. It lies within my safe, and the clue to the combination are to be found in 3 cylinders, each hidden where life and study combine in the Greek world. Each cylinder is numbered, even as if the celebrated author says, "Order is the pleasure of reason, but disorder is the delight of the imagination." Indeed, despite my preference for organized chaos, I must admit that reason usually prevails in the end. If by chance a person, or should I say a genius, was to match my intellect and find the combination of the safe, I would ask that they deliver its content into the safekeeping of my friend and colleague, Professor Armitage of Miskatonic University. The content of this safe is not only a vast digest of knowledge, but also a weapon that is far too dangerous for it to fall into the wrong hands. I hope that you will be able to appreciate the danger that this represents, and that you will act accordingly. In any event, I will neither be there to guide you, nor to suffer from your actions. Okay. So we need 3 cylindrical sort of things here before we can turn the safe and get it open. We could, of course, just look it up online, but that will not be in fair play.
Arkham editions. Never heard of him.
Azathoth and Other Horrors. E.P. Derby. Also known as the Nightmare Lyrics, this collection of poems was sensationally received when first published in 1908. Derby was only 18 years old. This volume is part of the Arkham Anthology, a luxurious collection of treatises and works on esotericism and the supernatural.
How many volumes are there in this collection?
C.D. Waits. A book of spells, supposedly written by the legendary King Solomon. It contains various rituals of invocation and rituals of curse. Reedition by Claudia D. Waits based on L.W. de Lawrence's original. This volume is part of the Arkham Anthology, a luxurious collection of treatises and works. Yeah. Okay.
Another volume by Arkham Editions.
Opera in 8 acts by Benvenuto Ciotti Bradiguerra, an infamous lyrical work published in Italy in 1768. It is said that the opera was performed only once, resulting in an audience riot that left several dead and missing. This volume is part of the Arkham Anthology, a luxurious collection of treatises and works.
Arkham Editions. Never heard of him.
Opera in 8 acts, yes. Audience riot that left several dead and missing.
How many volumes are there in this collection?
Opera.
Another volume by Arkham Editions.
Collection of long-term astrological predictions, written in verse. Written by Nostradamus, translated by E. Leone and Theophilus Wydebridge.
Arkham Editions. Never heard of him.
An ancient Phrygian manuscript translated by William R. Sandbach. The text claims that in the distant past, Europe and other continents were controlled by the mothers of this people. Moreover, that our alphabet is derived from the Phrygian language.
How many volumes are there in this collection?
Collection of essays on American folklore and urban legends, written by Albert Wilmarth, professor at Miskatonic University. Alright, that's all of that.
Another volume by Arkham Editions.
Written by Hermes Trismegistus, translated and edited by Nathaniel M. Coppelius. This collection of texts on different beliefs was written by a legendary philosopher. It includes a translation of the Emerald Tablet, a popular text among 16th century alchemists. Oh, that's cool. Alright, looking good for that. Gotta find some cylinders. And here's one.
Cylinders that Drake tried to hide.
3 and
I should
2.
perhaps listen to them.
Yep. As precise and illustrated with as much detail as the first volume, this book focuses on healing surgery specific to malformations and motor disorders. Gotcha.
The Book of Zion is the foundational work behind Helena Blavatsky's Theosophical movement. Its followers place truth on the same footing as a religion.
These Tibetan writings are the origin of the esoteric movement founded by Helena Blavatsky at the end of the 19th century. The creator of Theosophy would have drawn extensively on the texts of this work, but no one has ever been able to consult them. I thought they didn't exist. This book, discovered in the nameless bookstore of Darkwater, could be as much as a fake as irrefutable proof of Blavatsky's sincerity. Well, we kept it. Got occultism. Yep. No way to make that progress faster. Objects discovered in the environment. Still need that last cylinder. We'll be good to go. Medicine Tome 3. Even a few years back, it was possible for a single practitioner to know all the medical knowledge of his time. This book, which concludes the series, shows that this is now virtually impossible. About 10 renowned doctors took part in putting together this collection. There's a lot to know. Puritan colony. led by Reverend John Wickwood, settled on the island during the 17th century. They named the island Darkwater because of the dark shades of the sea. They believed it was because of the peculiar color of the rocks surrounding the island. They erected the first buildings, among which were the Hawkins Manor, the church, and the cemetery. The rare documents and handwritten notes they left spoke of nightmares and deviant behaviors. They disappeared at the beginning of the 18th century. Interesting. Alright, where's that last cylinder? We got to find that.
Things are not looking good.
Chest. The Queen's Gambit. Oh, I could listen to the first two, but...
A kind of chalice.
Oh, that's cool. This goblet seems to be very ancient. It seems to be made of gold and decorated with real precious stones. Do the rubies and sapphires make up a specific motif? Interesting. Weird, I didn't notice that the first time. I'm going to find that last cylinder before we get to work on deciphering. Then again, that might take a while, so I guess you might as well now. Oh, we do have them all. Right? Ha! That's funny. Alright, well, here we go.
And these red drops, like precious stones, lie fixed, set in divine gold.
Yep.
To be the guardian of the Grail does not protect me from its attractions, Henry. And I do confess it. I am willing to pay to know its secrets.
So the rubies are the first clue.
The chalice of knowledge.
We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5 rubies, right? 3, 4, 5. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 rubies.
I finally understood that we were only pieces on the chessboard of the gods. Let those of us who are still standing protect our White Queen from their dark soldiers. I see our number dwindling, and my will strengthens as my apprehension grows. We shall refuse to be the playthings of destiny.
Okay. White chessboard.
The Queen has little protection.
The ones still standing are on the board, at least. There's some off the board, but...
The Queen has little protection.
There is 4 on the board itself. And 6 altogether. Yep. Standing, at least there's a 7th if you count the other pawn facing down.
Dear friend, I thank you again for the anthology of the works of Arkham editions that you sent me.
Yep.
Volume 9, Azathoth and Other Horrors, seemed particularly relevant to my research. I never tire of browsing through them.
Alright, we're gonna go back to Azathoth. Azathoth. We have to find it manually, probably. Alright, Azathoth. There should be a number in there. We didn't know this before. Now I just have to remember where it was. It was somewhere nearby.
So these are the volumes that Drake was talking about in his message.
9. Alright. 5, 4, and 9 so far. Let's try that. Alright, worth a shot. Nope. Okay. Not quite, huh? Not quite. we've got 6 the white chess pieces. And 7 altogether. Dang, okay. Well, these tricky puzzles after all. We did follow it in the right order though. Right? Let me see.
What did Drake say about this collection?
It's definitely 9. 1908. 18 years old. No, that's nothing to do with it. So it seemed to me followed it in order, but...
The Chalice of Knowledge.
2, 3, 4, 5. Do the rubies and sapphires make up a specific motif? So maybe it's one of those. It's definitely only...
The Queen has little protection.
4 or 3 chess pieces. Maybe the Queen doesn't count, which would make it 3. Ha! Okay, that's it. It was the chessboard. Great. We got everything else right. The Queen does not count as the soldiers. Alright, well that's awesome. That definitely is a good record for my puzzle solving skill. Very exciting. Awesome. There we go. That is fun. What have we got here? Oh dear. Stuck in the limbo of the floating space. See about that. Another achievement we got. Hold on. Chapter 8, Riverside Institute. In the nameless bookstore, Pierce traced the trail of an attempted burglary. He discovered that Charles Hawkins was behind the attempt. Pierce opened the bookseller's safe to find what the latter and Sarah Hawkins had hidden there. A book covered in human skin lied inside. Irresistibly attracted the detective. When he opened it, his mind was projected into another body. Wow. How about that? Read the Necronomicon. It's the Necronomicon.
What says Dr. Fuller? It's his patient, after all.
Oh, dear.
He's busy with Captain Fitzroy. He specifically asked us not to bother him when that's the case.
Is.
Oh, of course. I'll see what I can do. Mr. Blake, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Colden. We'll take care of you.
There's nothing we can do. I tried talking to him. He's catatonic.
Oh, join the woman doctor. Interesting. Guarding the patient. Has he been drugged? Examine the patient. Call Dr. Fuller.
Did you inject him with a tranquilizer?
No, Doctor. Not me, not anyone. Our stock is empty yet again.
Seat captain
again?
There.
But there was enough for the whole island.
More and more people are suffering from insomnia. We can't refuse to help.
Of course.
Any idea what this man might be undergoing?
Very well. I'll examine him.
I want to do those other dialogue options, but
Severe malnutrition. Swollen abdomen with traces of petechia. Doesn't seem like an edema. Slight protuberances seem to indicate the presence of a foreign body.
okay.
His skin shows abnormal loss of color and seems dried out. He's totally dehydrated. His fingertips and toes seem to feature a slight ring under the skin, tender at the touch, slightly sticky.
Well then.
30-year-old subject, severe hypothermia, erythematous papules around the eyes and eardrums, necrosed palpebral tissue. Lord, this smell.
So, Doctor, an opinion?
I'm not sure I have the necessary knowledge to treat this man.
Don't say that. You're our most worthy doctor after Dr. Fuller.
Some of his symptoms are beyond my comprehension.
What did you find?
I see signs of hypodermoclysis, but he's still dehydrated. When was his last IV?
He's constantly under perfusion. I've even gone beyond the recommended dose to no avail. And you won't believe me, but when we bathed him earlier...
He seemed to feel better?
Yes. Like he needs an aquarium, not a perfusion.
Good.
But that doesn't explain his condition.
In spite of the muscle contractions, his arms seem limp.
Yes. They can't have decalcified, not at this rate.
And yet, if there is a bone in this arm, it's softer than that of a newborn baby. What about his cranium?
It's soft at the touch. It does seem like the skull of a baby.
Look at these sticky rings growing at his fingertips. What can be happening?
I'm sure you'll find an explanation.
To fish.
You have to.
Fishman.
Did you examine his abdomen? It would seem there's something inside.
He hasn't eaten in days. Are you certain it's not an edema?
No. Can't you recognize an edema? Pushing with your finger won't leave a trace. And look at these bumps.
It's not like he could be pregnant.
Whatever it is, this man has something inside him that shouldn't be there. We should operate on him at once.
Dr. Fuller said not to worry, that the edema would go away by itself.
You know, I'm not sure Dr. Fuller is telling the truth.
Okay. Mutating time.
I almost don't believe it myself, but these symptoms are not those usually associated with the human species.
What do you mean? Don't tell me you believe in extraterrestrials.
No. This poor man is from our world, all right. But his body is undergoing unnatural mutations. And this transformation is killing him. His body simply can't cope.
Where could he have gotten such an infection?
I pray that it's not here.
Dr. Colden,
Naughty doctor.
may I know what you're doing to my patient?
What I'm doing? How about what you've done to him?
Let us calm down, my dear Marie. I don't appreciate your tone, nor your insinuations. I've done to him what I do to all my patients. Provide him with the best available care.
Your imagination is without limit. It's your homemade drug again, is it not? Those people are not your guinea pigs.
There, there. What have you seen to put you in such a state?
His limbs? His body temperature? I don't know what experiments you've undertaken, but this is going too far.
Oh, I sense some excitement beneath your indignation. Could it be you wish to join me in my scientific endeavors?
You are a brilliant physician, Dr. Fuller, but this man has the attributes of some kind of animal.
Fascinating. An animal, you say? Could you be more precise? Cephalopod, perhaps.
This amuses you.
Your reaction does. I know your thirst for knowledge, Doctor. It's your innocent worries for this man that have you overreacting.
For this man, and the others whose medical files you've been hiding.
I have to protect my discovery. These people owe me their life, but the world isn't ready yet. It will be, in time.
I will not let you do this.
You disappoint me, Marie, but I still have hope you'll one day share my point of view. In the meantime, take care of your own patients and try not to forget who you're dealing with.
Was that a threat? What did he mean?
It was a warning. Dr. Fuller is this institution's founder and one of our profession's most influential voices. My word is of no weight against his. If I continue to protest, I will only ruin my reputation and career.
It's scandalous. Can't we do anything? Is there no evidence of his crimes?
Oh, that evidence exists. I'm sure of it. I need to find the missing medical files.
And where would you find those? In his office? What if you get caught?
I'd rather not think about that. I'm counting on your discretion.
Of course, Doctor. You can count on me. I'll keep Mum.
Keep Mum. Alright, so we are now the Doctor. Can't access Pierce at the moment. And we actually have control of her now, so we shall see.
Chronic insomnia. Like half the island.
No, you're pulling my leg. I'm not joking. I saw the schedule. She's alone in the bathroom again. And she still says nothing to that old witch, Donovan?
Oh, listen to the way you talk, you naughty girl. And the answer is no. You can imagine that she doesn't dare say a thing. That silly goose lets herself be trodden on.
Oh well, at least we won't have to clean for a while.
And just wait and see the next time the water's cut off. It's a real show. Dr. Colden?
Watch out for the water, Doctor.
This very interesting book, aimed at a wide public, demonstrates how non-recognized sciences have influenced modern medicine. Magnetism, grandmother's secrets, Chinese acupuncture, hypnosis, herbal medicine, alchemy, and many others have contributed, to a certain extent, to the enrichment of medicine at the beginning of this century. Okay. Here we go.
Gentlemen, may I help you?
We're waiting on news regarding our mother, Maureen Harding. She came in with a kidney problem, but we haven't heard anything since.
I'm sorry. Dr. Fuller is a very busy man.
Well, is there anyone else who can tell us what's going on?
She's our only family, you know? And we can't even see her medical file.
Just leave right away.
Don't worry. I'm aware our institution is not always welcoming. But your mother is in good hands. I'll tend to her myself, and keep you informed at once. Would that suit you?
Well, that sure sounds great to us, Doctor. Thank you.
But those are just words, so we're not budging.
Very well. At least I'll know where to find you.
So, Doctor, have you been able to examine our mother?
I'm sorry, but I don't have time for this right now.
They're taking us for fools. So,
I'm sorry.
They're taking it.
Alright, let's see.
Patients and hospital personnel eat the same food.
Okay.
Doctor, please. My chest. Oh.
His perfusion of a semi-physiological solution doesn't seem to work. He's undergoing a ventricular fibrillation. Nurse? Deborah, come and help me, please. His potassium level is too high. Replace it with 2% glucose solution with insulin, calcium, and sodium bicarbonate.
I'll tend to it right away.
Thank you. He's in your hands. Hay fever. What's he doing here? He broke his back in an accident down by the docks.
Ah, the whaling station. What's wrong with me?
What are you talking about?
Doctor, that you?
Yes, it's Dr. Colden. Tell me what happened.
It's the old whaling station. See?
Bootleggers.
The one that hides the smuggling business.
Oh no, not them. They don't go on that side of the island. Everyone in his place. The captain on one side, Cat on the other, and me. Well, I've been to the whaling station, I have.
What did you see there?
Nothing. Nothing at all. The floor was all rotten and I fell straight through.
And that's how you broke your back?
Perhaps. No idea. Passed out. I'll just sleep a bit more. I'll just...
Interesting.
Ah, so there's Harding. She's still sleeping. Given her file, a nephrectomy would have been inevitable. But Fuller was able to save her kidney.
Dr. Colden?
Doctor.
Dr. Colden?
Interesting.
Dr. Colden?
Another insomniac. I should find the cause for such a widespread trouble.
Nightmares. Such prints.
Dr. Colden, here you are at last. This patient was again brought up to the psychiatric wing. We've been following the treatment you prescribed, but the dysgeusia persists and he's lost a great deal of weight. We haven't been able to move him. The stress makes him hyperallergic.
Sir, I am going to examine you. Do you understand? Inject him with a dose of pentobarbital, intramuscular, so that I can conduct the clinical examination. His binds left bloody wounds. He bit his lips so much, they're still bleeding. White froth, evidently because of such drooling.
So, Doctor, what should we do with this patient?
It's treated.
Those basement brutes tied him up too tight and now he's hurt.
I keep trying to heal his wounds, but he reopens them.
Do you have a diploma as a nurse?
Excuse me?
So take care of this man.
Take care of it. Alright. Good stuff, then we'll be back to it. Wasn't gonna do a dragon raid tonight because we're coming back to hunt shortly tonight. But yeah, I guess I'll do one anyway because it is my last night of self-paid subscription Marshmallow Fund. So we'll get to that, and I will see you guys in just a little bit, and we'll be back very soon. It's going to be great. I will see you then, guys. Going to be very lovely. So we'll get to that, and I will see you guys. Thanks to Alucard and Reaper for signing for chat. See you in just a little while. I will see you then, guys. We'll be fantastic. Back with some hunt tonight very soon. See you for that. Gonna be great. Thanks to Alucard and Reaper. Catch you shortly. Alright. See you in just a little while. I will see you then, guys. We'll be fantastic. Back with some hunt tonight very soon. See you for that. Gonna be great. Thanks to Alucard and Reaper. Catch you shortly. Alright. See you in just a little while. I will see you then, guys. We'll be fantastic. Back with some hunt tonight very soon. See you for that. Gonna be great. Thanks, Alucard and Reaper. Catch you shortly. Alright. See you in just a little while. See you then, guys. We'll be fantastic.
Way down, it's all or nothing. It is not impartial at all. Ace, welcome in, Ace. Thank you so much for joining us. How were your Lovecraft tales earlier? Okay, so wait, hold on. We gotta read Emily's story time of why she's banned from PETA in Virginia. So you used to work at a non-profit, low-cost animal shelter that provided low-cost pet care if you either qualified due to low income or if you adopted from the SPCA next door. Apparently, this made you elitist animal abusers according to PETA. Really? What am I doing with that lighthouse, Mister Ace? I'm actually trying to be a good citizen who's technically on, who's been arrested and cleaning up this world. I've been put on a community service. So the president of the city chapter and some others decided to storm in your clinic with cameras to catch your horrid deeds on tape. And all you did was tell their president, as a 2-year vegan yourself, you could tell his Sperry's were made of leather. Definitely not PETA friendly. And he really didn't appreciate that, and neither did any of his friends. So now you're banned. That is amazing. I love that story, Emily. Saw a bit of the Bloodborne the other night in the graveyard. Oh, Ace, thanks for being there. No kind of how epic. Mickey, very nice. Oh man, Ace, you've reminded me of Disneyland. I've got to go. I've got to take Ghost Bear Lore there soon. It's important. I just left a toad covered in ink. A poor little defenseless toad. Whatever shall I do? Well, he's gonna sit there.